We are now up to Pei Hamid Beis, and we're about to understand a machlokes tanoim about Magdish Maisi de Ishto. The first opinion in this Mishnah is Harei Zu Osavo Cheles, that the Hegdesh that he was Magdish is not Chal at all. A Baal does not have permission and authority to be Magdish Maisi de Ishto, and therefore the Hegdesh is not Chal and Osavo Cheles. Whatever she produces, she can eat. Vamosar. Now, let's say the Baal was Magdish, the Nosar, meaning whatever she does beyond the sheer kotzuv, as we said before, of 5 sloim, that a woman is required to produce for her husband within the framework of marriage, anything beyond that is the Mishnah, records a machlokas tanon. Rabbi Omer Hegdesh. The Hegdesh is chal on the Mosar, even though it's a davar shelo bali olam. And Rabbi Yochanan Sadler Omer chulin. Ein on the makdish davar shelo bali olam. Yom Shmuel Lochik Rabbi Yochanan Asan. So we see here that in the context of the Mishnah of Hamagdish Maisi de Ishto, Shmuel embraces the halacha, the ruling of Rabbi Yochanan Hasadlo, that ain't other makdish davar shelo bali olam. And yet Shmuel here in our Mishnah is postulating like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that the neder that she took, which is only chal after the gerushin, is going to be chal. It's a valid neder. And Shmuel, in accepting Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, is holding that Adam Magdish davar shelo bali olam. He says here, Ketzad Pasak Shmuel Kedas Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Asova Sheisha Sha'asros Maisi Yadel Baili Yachula Neder Liacha Gerushin. That's our Mishnah. Af Shebeshas Neder Hayized davar shelo bali olam. And yet Shmuel Paskins like Rabbi Yochanan Sandlor that Hegdish is not Chal and Mosar because it's a davar shelo bali olam, and they know the Magdish davar shelo bali olam. So we have now a stira between two rulings of Shmuel. The Chi Tema, and if you'll try to reconcile this stira, Ki Kamar Allah Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, when Shmuel accepted La Halacha Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, he really didn't mean in our Mishnah that the neder requires hafara because after gerushin will be chal, but al ha'adafa hu dekama. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that the Baal should be made for the Nedarim of his wife because maybe he'll divorce her. He did not accept Rabbi Akiva, who insisted on hafara because of hadafa. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds that hadafa does not belong to the wife, but rather belongs to the Baal. And here's where Shmuel accepts Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. He never accepted Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that other magdish davar shelo bali olam. That we know he rejects. And really, in truth, the neder is not chal according to Shmuel because liacha gerushin is davar shelo bali olam. All that Shmuel meant to say by accepting Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is in the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri about the hadafa, where Rabbi Akiva was of the opinion that the hadafa belongs to the wife because she went beyond the 5 slime. Here's where Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, the hadafa belongs to the Baal. And that, in that context, and only relevant to that particular point, did Shmuel accept Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? And the Gemara rejects it. Lema, Shmuel should have said, "Allah Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri b'hadafa." that we only accept Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri as far as Hadafa, that Hadafa doesn't belong to the wife, but rather to the Baal. Inami, or alternatively, you should have said Halacha Kitana Kama, who holds that the Baal does not have to be made for the neder of his wife. And that means that Hadafa belongs to the Baal, and therefore she could not take a neder to prohibit even Hadafa, because she was being mafkir the shibud, and a neder cannot be mafkir the shibud. Inami, or Shmuel could have said Allah Rabbi Akiva, who holds that Hadafa belongs to the wife. But Shmuel instead says Halach Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Stam. He doesn't qualify it. It seems that he's accepting Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri hook, line, and sinker, that Allah Kamoso Legamre, even with regard to the principle of Adam Magdish Davar Shalom Bali Olam. Elam Rav Yosef. So therefore, Rav Yosef has to offer his own answer to this question, that according to the Shita Shmuel, Ein Adam Magdish Davar Shalom Bali Olam, and that we saw in the case of a Baal who is Magdish Maisi Adeishto. And now we understand that a Baal cannot be Magdish the Mosar of Maisi Adeishto, because it's the Davar Shalom Bali Olam. So why is it that Shmuel accepts Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in terms of Konomos in Nedarim, and the neder could be chal even before the gerushin, for after the gerushin, and it's a davar shalom bali olam. Shani konomos, Shmuel holds that you could create a neder on a davar shadayin in ba'olam. It's not in the world, and the reason for that is hol ve'odam oser peros chavero olav. In other words, the Nedarim is different from Hegdish. Ain't on the Magdish Davar Shalom, but Neder is different than Hegdish, because Hegdish requires violence. You cannot be Magdish something unless it's yours. I can't be Magdish someone else's parents. But Neder, I can create a Neder that's also on myself, your parents, someone else's parents. So even though I couldn't be Magdish someone else's parents, but I could take a neder and a kona prohibiting myself from having enough from someone else's payrolls. And therefore, as far as a neder being chal and generating an isa on a davar shalom bali olam, a person could generate an isa neder on a davar shalom bali olam, even though he cannot be magdish a davar shalom bali olam, because hegdesh requires violence, and if it's a davar shalom bali olam, you don't have violence. And someone else's payros is a davar shalom bali olam. You know, you don't own it, you can't be magdish it, but nevertheless, you can ask them on these payros on yourself. So you see that neder is different than hegdish. And I'm going to fast forward for just a moment until we get to Abaye, to a note here on the next page in the Masifta. He quotes the Stipler, the Kilas Yaakov. He says the following, that the yesod, the basis that underlies the opinion that Ein Adam Magdish Davar Shalom Bali Olam, is the fact that he's not a bailus. The object itself exists in the world, but if he doesn't have bailus, that's a Davar Shalom Bali Olam as far as the possibility of being Magdish. And Rav Yosef now is holding, says the Stipler, that if a person could prohibit on himself the peiros of Chadvero, it proves that even though L'gabi Hegdesh, everything depends upon Bailus, but with regard to Neder, Ein Adam Tzarech Lios Bailim Ala Chayfetz K'dei Lios Al Atzmo. So again, he doesn't have Bailus, and yet he's generating an Isa on himself. And Yochel Adam Lesser Bened Davar Shalom Bali Olam Bein Al Atzmo Bein Al Achirim. Now there's a leap of faith over here in Rav Yosef, because Rav Yosef is saying that I can asa your payros on me, but that's a Davar Shalom Bali Olam, and neder doesn't require bailus. But in the case of gerushin, the neder could not be chal now at all. It's only going to be chal after gerushin. Can you take a neder now that'll be chal after gerushin? That's a davar shalom bali olam. As opposed to peros chavero, where the peros exist in the world. Amalei Abai says to Rav Yosef Bishleim, I understand other most of peros chavero of sharei, other most of peros of al chavero. Now, although it's true, and Abai concedes that the peros of chavero with regard to him is sort of like a davar shalom bali olam to some extent, but yet a person could prohibit on himself the peros of chavero, even though he doesn't own them. And therefore, you would come to the conclusion, says Abai in his concession to Rav Yosef, that he can prohibit on himself even a davar shalom bali olam. However, says Abaye, this din was not said unless he is answering someone else's peros on himself, because he himself, his guf, is birshuso. So although he has one strike against him, that the peros are not birshuso, but at least his guf is birshuso. Now, if he prohibits his peros on his friend, then even though the guf of chavero ain't a birshuso, but the peros are birshuso, he owns the peros. And therefore, Ela Yesar Davar Shalom Bali Olam on Chavero. However, the case where both the peros and the gufa adam are not birshuso is ein adam oser peros chavero al chavero. I can't say that your peros are also onto you because the peros are not in my rishus and your guf is not in my rishus. So it's clear that ein adam yochel lesser as peros chavero al chavero memela. Therefore, ein adam oser davar shalom bali olam al chavero. Right, so she's taking a neder to prohibit her maisi yadayim, which is a davar shalom bali olam, onto her baal, and then she's meshuberes labal. It can only be chal after gerushin. So both the guf hadavar and well, what did he call it? Not the guf hadavar. Let's get the terminology. Sorry. The peros and the guf ha'adam are both at, again, peros here means the maisi yadayim, are both out of her rishus. She doesn't have rishus on the maisi yadayim because they haven't come into the world yet. She doesn't have rishus on the guf of her husband, and therefore, if gam haperos, the gam gufo shalbaila eina b'shusa, she cannot take this neder. And therefore, the Gemara is going to now have to look for another possible reconciliation of that contradiction of Shmuel regarding Eino the Magdish Davar Shalom Bali El Omer Avhuna Breder of Yeshua. What's the case in which Shmuel validates the neder? Shmuel concedes that you cannot create a neder on a Davar Shalom Bali al Chavero, as Abai said. Both the peros or ma'asidaim and the guf of the baal are eina b'shusa. But why is it that a woman can create an iser of ma'asidaim al baila? It's a case of omersi kodshu yodai l'asem. This is not a davar shalom bali olam. She is being magdish her yodayim, not the ma'asidaim, because the ma'asidaim are not in her rishus; they don't exist in the world, but rather her yodayim. And she's generating an iser on her yodayim limalacha. The yodayim is isnu ba'olam, but the yodayim are kayomim ba'olam, they exist. So we're not going to judge this or define this as oseres al baila davar shalom bali olam, but rather it's oseres al baila davar shekayim b'shusa. Her yodayim are in her rishus. Now here, there's a long discussion. Adam Amagdish Dekel Peirosov, the Ritva says, is Chala Hegdish. You can be Magdish Dekel Peirosov, so the fruits don't exist at this point. Now, if she's Magdish Yad L'Malacha, that's not the same as Dekel Peirosov. Because now the Kedusha has to be Chal on her Yodayim. I mean, she has the status of Ben Chorin, and Ein Kedusha Chala al Ben Chorin. And furthermore, even if the Kedusha could be Chal on her Yad, it doesn't make sense that she could be Magdish the Maisi Yodayim. Because it's not like Dekel Peirosa. In case of Dekel Peirosa, the Peirosa Yotzim Migufa Dekel. If there's a chalos kiddush on the dekel, then the peiros are memela kedoshim afheim. But in the case of yadayim, it's not that the maisi yadayim are inherent and they grow from the yad. The yad does the malacha, and memela you have maisi yadayim. Again, this is very, very sophisticated and very profound. So Gemara now raises the following kasha. If she says is it really a valid hegdesh? She now has a shibata baila and she can't be magdish at all. And therefore, she should have said that she's magdish your debt. 1 second. Oh, she can only be makdish on yadayim after gerushin, after the shibud to the baal is paka. And then once again we come back to the makdish shalom bolio, and the Gemara answers the omra lechi magarsha. Now the Gemara thinks that if she explicitly verbalizes that this din of Hegdesh on a Yadayim with Maseh Yadayim is only going to be chal after Gerish. The Gemara thinks now that it's going to be a Dover Shaboli Olam because the Hegdesh is on her Yadayim is only going to be chal after the Shibud is Paka and after the Gerish is chal. But the Gemara says, no, that's not so. Hashtav Mias Lo Megarsha. She's taking the neder now. She's being Magdish her Yadayim. Why do you insist that since she verbalized that the Hegdesh should be chal after Gerushin, that's going to be valid, and there's no chisar to Maisi Yadayim? Well, guess what? It's still a Dover Shalom Boliol right now. Right now, she's Mishubetis Lavaila. She can't be Magdish Yadayim. She can only be Magdish Yadayim after Gerushin. It's okay, even if she added Lish and his Garsha. There's still a chisar to the Dover Shalom Oliola. And here on the top of Pei Vav and Aleph, Amar Rab Ila, the Gemara answers that in the case where she's Magdish Yadayim L'Maseyim, this is not a Dover Shalom Oliola. Even though right now she's Mishubedes L'Bayil and she can't be Magdish Yadayim, so Hegdish would only be valid after Gerushin. Nevertheless, the Gufa Yadayim are Bershusa, completely in her rishus, and she can be magdish them for Maisi Yadayim. And I'll prove it to you, says the Gemara. Uma ilu omer lechavero sodezu shani mochelecha lichshe ekachenam imchati kadesh milo kadsha. If a person says to his friend, I'm about to sell you this field, and then after I sell it to you, I'm going to buy it back. And I want it to be Hegdesh after I buy it back. And now the Gemara asks as a rhetorical question, Milo Kadsha, for sure the Hegdesh will be Chal when he buys it back. Now, even though this Sada is now going to be sold to someone else, how can he be Magdish a Sada that's being sold to someone else? But the answer is right now, the Sada is in his Rishus. He hasn't yet sold it. He could have been Magdashit right now. And since he can be Magdashit right now, he can be Magdashit for the time later on when Tashav L'Shuso, when he repurchases, and the same din should apply to an Isha. Her goof is in her Rishut. Her yad is in her Rishut. She can be Magdish, the Maisi Yadayim, for the period of time liachar gerushin, because right now the Yadayim are in her Rishut, just like the case of the Sada that he hasn't yet sold. And when he says, I need mochel l'chol she'ekochenum imchati kodesh, that hektish is chal. Okay, then, so again, we're in the middle of a very heavy sugya, but that's the daf for today. Let me wish you a great day. Thank you so much.